but very limited resources. Also with the electricity market as the Philippines. And Sri Lanka is an island, is pretty far from here, but we have a good opportunity to invite Professor Fernando from Sri Lanka to speak with us. Before we go into the detail of each country, I would like to introduce our speaker today, starting from my far right, Mr. Mohammed Rashdan bin Yusuf. Rashdan has over 32 years in corporate finance. He was with the Gamuda multinational construction and engineering firm from 2018 to 2023, but now he is a chairman of the Energy Regulatory Commission. Rashdan holds a double first-class honor degree in economics from University of Cambridge, United Kingdom. The next one from Myanmar, Mr. Tin Win U, Director, Department of Electric Power Planning, Ministry of Electric and Energy. He has a very long experience in hydropower plants as a civil engineer, and he has been assigned for power projects planning in 2011 and has an extensive experience in domestic and foreign investment. He holds a master degree in public administration. The next speaker is from the Philippines, Ms. Mona Lisa Sidimalanta, the chairperson of the Energy Regulatory Commission Philippines. She has been recognized energy practitioner in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, and a leader in power sector. And on the August 2022, she was appointed to be a chairperson of the Energy Regulatory Commission of the Philippines. Ms. Dimalanta was a professor of law at Ateneo de Manila Law School and a member of the faculty of Ateneo School of the Government. She holds a Master of Law degree from University of Michigan. The next speaker from Singapore, Mr. Eugene To. Eugene To is the Assistant Chief Executive and the Chief Commercial Officer in the Energy Market Authority of Singapore. He oversees corporate development and service of the EMA division. Prior to this appointment, he led the architect and food manufacturing division in Enterprise Singapore. Eugene graduated with a master's degree in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon University and double first-class bachelor degree from the same university. He also completed the MBA program from the INSEAD in Paris. The last speaker from Sri Lanka, Professor Manjula Fernando. He is a chairman of the Public Utility Commission of Sri Lanka. Professor Manjula received the Bachelor of Science first-class honor from the University of Paradeniya, Sri Lanka, and pursue his master from the Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden and PhD from the Royal Institute of Technology also in Sweden. He also the senior member of IEEE from 2010. So now we are ready to listen to the 5 countries. We would like to start from Malaysia, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Punawat. Okay, I do have some slides. Right, okay, you all can see them. Okay. Firstly, I'd just like to touch on our policy first. We have updated our national energy policy not too long ago, in 2022. It would cover just over 2 decades, 2022 to 2040. We, as in the government of Malaysia, take energy extremely seriously. So therefore, we have set up a National Energy Policy Committee, and that is now chaired by the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. This is front and center in terms of our macroeconomic policy stance. So the objectives of the policy is as shown, as I mentioned, macroeconomic resilience and energy security, but more importantly, to balance that with social equity and affordability, obviously, especially in terms of rates and tariffs, and most importantly, environmental sustainability. The strategic thrusts to achieve those objectives are as follows. We need to optimize our energy resources. Dr. Punawat mentioned, actually we don't have any coal at all. We import all of our coal, but in terms of our energy mix, it represents 58% of electricity. So it is by far the majority. It is actually because of its cost. The cost of imported coal, we import mainly from India, but also some from Indonesia, our coal. And it is really to keep that objective B earlier. But now we obviously want to focus on C. So our policy today is there is no more new coal anymore. No new coal plants at all. So our energy resources that we do have is we are a net exporter of oil and gas. And you may have heard our national oil company, Petronas, is a major oil and gas enterprise. It is 100% nationally owned. It's also within the Fortune 100 in the world. So as I mentioned, strategic trust is to optimize energy resources, stimulate growth and market opportunities. The third point is for the energy sector in particular, we need to focus towards environmental sustainability. And then talking about sustainability is not just environmental, but also to look at fiscal sustainability as well, which is obviously a challenge for all of us. Moving on, we then developed, this is very recently launched, just last year, late last year, August 23, what we call our National Energy Transition Roadmap, or NETR. And this is where we want to focus on energy transition specifically and change the way we generate to improve climate resilience. The key highlights is to achieve net zero by 2050. Within the NETR document is we want to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from the current level of around 260 million tons equivalent of CO2, a reduction of about 32% by 2050 to achieve that net zero. To do that, we will increase our renewable energy mix to 70% by 2050. It was a big increase in our target. It was 40% previously. Now it's 70%. That's an 11-fold increase in RE plant-up required. The major headache for us or challenge is actually the grid. We estimate 182 billion, that's approximately 40 billion US dollars required to develop our grid, strengthen it, and modernize it. Because of course, like most of all of our grids, it was designed as for one way where big coal plants would then generate electricity down to homes and factories. But now we have a lot of disaggregated generation. The homes themselves are generators of solar, and electricity has to flow the other way now. So that is a major challenge, and not to mention it's intermittent. So we have identified that a big area of investment. Having said that, it has the potential to uplift our GDP ninefold from 25 billion to 220 billion ringgit by 2050. And how are we going to have the transition? We have identified natural gas as the transitional fuel as we keep growing our renewable energy mix to increase it to 70%. As I mentioned, no new coal anymore. These were our targets previously before. In gray, we have uplifted them even further, and this is the latest target to 70%. We have 6 levers also to achieve this, so it's not just about renewable energy, which is one of the levers, but I think more importantly is also to achieve energy efficiency. We want to increase energy efficiency by at least 25% in terms of our energy use intensity. Hydrogen, by the way, will be a major energy carrier for us. In our document, NETR, there will be no more gray hydrogen by 2050. All hydrogen will either be blue or green. This is very important for us because I mentioned that Malaysia's economy is very much underpinned by oil and gas with Petronas. So we are committed to no more gray hydrogen, just blue and green hydrogen. Bioenergy also plays an important role. We have quite a lot of biomass. Malaysia is one of the largest producers of palm oil, second only to Indonesia. So bioenergy is a key issue. Electrification of our transport sector, green mobility is another major thrust for us. And carbon capture, as I mentioned, is to produce that blue hydrogen that I mentioned earlier. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but for the industrialists amongst you, this is just a snapshot of the various projects that comes out from the 6 levers. So there is a tremendous amount of potential projects. This would be a public-private structure. So for those who are interested, please either contact myself or the Ministry of Economy in Malaysia. We look to a lot of foreign investments to achieve these targets. So as you can see, for example, on green mobility alone, we look to 80% of the fleet, we want it to be electrified. That is a major commitment. So that will obviously involve electrification of EV chargers and so on across the country and so on and so forth. That's just one lever. There's so many of these levers that require tremendous investment and potential. All this is under NETR. These are the existing policies on renewable energy alone. It is predominantly for solar, and that's because as a tropical country, our wind is highly unreliable. So therefore, solar is a major focus. Peninsular Malaysia alone has the potential to generate up to 140 gigawatts of solar. And in East Malaysia is another 140 gigawatt of solar. So the potential is tremendous. Of course, the difficulty is in execution. So we are coming up with the policies. So I'll run through this very quickly. Large-scale solar is in its 5th iteration. 2 gigawatts is in play right now. We have this thing called NIDA, which is where excess solar can be sold into what's called the single buyer market. We have a virtual PPA program direct between corporate consumers like Amazon and so on with the solar producers. That's called CGPPA. We have net energy metering. We have green electricity tariff. And last but not least, quite excited to tell you about Energy Exchange Malaysia, or ENERGEM. But just before that, so for now, we have at the distribution level 2 gigawatt of capacity, and at the grid level 1.5. And that's before the LSS5 and so on. So that keeps growing and growing. ENERGEM is basically a market exchange facility to enable the export of renewable energy to our neighbors. You can see here, immediate neighbors are Singapore and Thailand. We have interconnections with them, so this would enable anyone in these countries to submit their bids into the market. It is only 100 megawatt for now, seems small, it's a pilot project, but as usual, the first 100 is the most difficult. Once it takes off, which I'm sure it will, this will very quickly lead to 1 gigawatt. My colleague Eugene from Singapore will tell you that Singapore alone would take up gigawatts of demand, or at least you have gigawatts of demand. So we are ready to provide this supply. By the way, this is a major shift in policy. Only about 1.5 years ago, we had a renewable energy ban, but now that has been completely overturned. We now encourage and want to develop renewable energy for export. To enable those exports, we have existing interconnections. Very quickly, we have the interconnection between Tenaga and EGAT. So that's 2 interconnections there of about, as you can see, 300 megawatt and 80 megawatt. The one with Singapore is 2 times 500 megawatt. It's based on the N-1 strategy. So at the moment, 500 megawatt is being utilized. But we are in talks with Singapore to essentially quadruple that capacity soon. And that's between TNB and Singpower. And between Sarawak and Indonesia, we have also a 200 megawatt interconnection there as well. And this leads me to what we call the beginning of an ASEAN power grid. We have a very successful LTMS power integration project. LTMS stands for Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. So it is a living proof of the success of the potential of the ASEAN power grid. And the LTMS allows for energy from Laos to be supplied all the way to Singapore with the help of Thailand and Malaysia in terms of the wheeling of that. And that, of course, obviously we want to expand it even further. And I'll end with this slide. The ASEAN power grid has great potential between all of the countries within ASEAN. For example, Sarawak Energy is looking at building a subsea HVDC cable all the way direct to Singapore. We have various MOUs between Malaysia and Vietnam, Malaysia and Thailand, Malaysia and Laos. We are looking at connections between Peninsula and Sumatra, and so on and so forth. And on the Sabah side, similarly with Kalimantan on Indonesia. So a lot of possibilities. Malaysia is very open to building much more interconnection with its neighbors and making the power grid a reality. So with that, I'll end my talk. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Yusof. It's very interesting to see that Malaysia has national energy transition plan with a holistic scheme and a strong ambition to increase the renewable mix up to 70% by 2050 with a no new coal policy. In a way, very interesting indeed. The next presenter, I will move to Myanmar. I will give the floor to Mr. Tien Vinh U. Please, stage is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to share about the energy policy and regulation to mobilize energy transition of Myanmar. This is our country profile, and I would like to highlight that is our population is 51 million, and the electrification ratio is 65% of the total household, and as well as the 65% of the total villages. The per capita consumption is around about 356 kilowatt hour in 2022. It is a very low consumption compared with the neighbor country. The payload is around about over 3,000 megawatt. Let's move to the energy resources in Myanmar. As you know, our country Myanmar is the very various resources, and it has the abundant. Among them, we can get you can see in the hydropower potential is the 108 gigawatt, and the 300 locations are identified by the over 49,000 megawatts. Our country Myanmar is the tropical country, and also the solar-rich country, we can get in the over 51,000 trillion watt-hour per year. And also in the wind power resources, we can get the over 365 trillion watt-hour per year. And in the geothermal condition, we have the identify in the 93 location, and we can get over the 200 degrees centigrade in underground. This renewable energy can be driven to in our country for the energy transition. This is our 9 pillar for the national energy sector policy. The first one is to implement the short and long-term comprehensive energy development plan. Second one is to institute law, rule, and regulation and to privatize state energy organization. Third one is to comply and systematic strategy on domestic demand and supply. And this one is to implement the program by which local population could proportionally enjoying the benefit of energy reserve discovered in the area. And this one is to implement the program on the wider scale utilization renewable energy resources. Another one is to promote energy efficiency and energy conservation. This one is to establish the research, development, design, and dissemination institution. To promote the international collaboration in energy matter, and the last one is to formulate the appropriate policy for energy product pricing. As you can see in the 4 pillars for mentioned by the red color is mainly related to the energy transition for our country, and the rest blue color will be supported for the energy transition. This is the main pillar for the legal and logistic documentation for the energy transition. The first one is the National Electricity Master Plan. Second one is the Electricity Law, and the third one is the National Energy Policy, and the last one is the National Determined Contribution and Commitment in the 2021. These 4 document will be driven to our country to move the energy transition. And we have the many rule regulation, related rule regulation and the notification and to move forward. This is the current installed capacity of our country, Myanmar. As of the 2024, the total installed capacity is over 6,397 megawatts. You can see hydropower is the dominant in with the 3,262 megawatt with the installed capacity. However, the gas generation is the over 11,000 gigawatt hour dominant in the generation. And you can see in the only coal power plant is the only 138 megawatt. It's the very less installed capacity in the power system. This is I would like to highlight that the energy transition roadmap by the NDC. We have the 2 targeted by the unconditional and the conditional target. Under the unconditional target, we have the plan to implement the over 39% of the renewable energy, and the under the conditional target, we have the 48% for the renewable energy under the international support. But we don't have any international support yet. This is our current condition of the hydro and renewable energy power plant implementation and condition. 39 hydropower plant and the 6 number of the solar power plant are existing and they generated to the national grid. Total installed capacity is 3,408 megawatts. 8 number of the hydropower project and the 30 number of the solar power project are ongoing stage, and the total installed capacity is 2,698 megawatt. Under the investigation stage, 42 number of hydropower project, 30 numbers of wind power project, and 22 numbers of the solar power project. Total installed capacity is over 46,000 megawatts. These all of the investigation project will be supported to our country energy transition. And you can see in the 80 wind mesh already constructed and recorded wind mesh and weather data in the whole country. In last year, we have the recorded the wind power, and we can construct the wind power project in the coastal, offshore, and the onshore area. So the wind power project will be the dominant in the near future in our country. And for encouraging of the renewable energy for the government, exemption from the imported duty and on the solar and the related accessory, every material imported, we will be exemption from imported duty. And promoting to the solar power, the government plan to purchase the excess power from the grid-connected solar rooftop by the household and the small industry with the affordable tariff. This is the on-grid power solar system in the rural area. Under the NDC, we have the unconditional and conditional target. Under the unconditional target, we will be implement the around about the 22 megawatt to supply fulfill to the 50% of the rural people. Under the conditional target, we will implement about the 88 megawatt to supply the 30% of the rural area. Let's move to our international collaboration. In Myanmar country, we have the neighbor country with the China, India, Laos, and the Thailand, and also we are the collaborate with the this all country to import it and export the power. All of the projects are under negotiation and the discussion stage. After the negotiation and the investigation stage complete, we will be implement the interconnection project, and then it will be supported to the ASEAN Power Grid. And also we have the strategy and the process for the effective use and conservation of the national energy. We have the 5 pillars for the energy conservation and the uses. The first one is the energy industry. Second one is the energy industry bidding, and the third one is the residential sector and the energy efficiency projects training for the electricity user. And the other one is the promoting to the electric vehicle and the future public transportation. The government policy on the electric vehicle is targeted for the share of the electric vehicle to reach the 40% by the 2025, 32% by the 2030, and the 67% by the 2040. It is a little bit challenges for our country to implement this target, but we are trying to implement this targeted. So the government encourage the exemption from the imported duty from the EV electric vehicle and the charging station. And also the government encourage for the free from the road, bridge, and parking space fee. And encourage the emergence of the charging station everywhere in the whole country. And also the government will be trying the solar sources will support to the EV charging station. This is our government policy on electric vehicle. And I would like to highlight the implementation of the EV project. The first, the government established the charging station in Nibiro, Yangon, Mandalay, and along the Yangon-Mandalay Expressway. This is the first stage. And this EV station operation in the 2023 will be already started and the operation stage. As of the January 2024, We have the already registered about the 1,900 EV in EV mobile. And also we will be expected in the 2024 will be the 3 times will be registered. And also they plan to offer the incentive to the boost or the rooftop or photovoltaic transmission system for the EV charging station. It will be supported to the energy efficiency and the energy transition. And also the government had the under planning to establish the further charging station across the nation. So it will be promoted to the EV vehicle users in our country user. This is my presentation, all of the information. Thank you.
So, thank you, Mr. Wu. We can see that Myanmar has a lot of potential of renewable energy, hydro, solar, and wind, up to 47,000 megawatt. And also the country has demand growth, 6 or 7% a year. So for the investor, you can see that Myanmar already have interconnection with neighboring country. If you want to invest, I think I can see a lot of potential there. So now we move to the next country, the Philippines. Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First off, I would like to thank the Office of the Energy Regulatory Commission of Thailand for this invitation. We are very excited to join you this afternoon and have personally been learning a lot from all the presentations this afternoon. So allow me to share the Philippine experience so far. Maybe ours is a bit different from what our neighbors are currently experiencing. There was a question earlier about the global standards between, there should be a separation between policy making and regulation. That's currently what we have in the Philippines. Since 2001, policy making is in the hands of the Department of Energy, and the regulatory function is with the Energy Regulatory Commission. That is the agency that I head together with 4 other members of the commission. Ours is regulatory functions, standard setting, rate setting, enforcement of rules, and enforcement of protection of consumers from anti-competitive behavior. Unlike our neighbors, the Philippines is no longer a vertically integrated industry. We have sectors that are already competitive, particularly the generation sector and the supply sectors. They are already competitive. Government is not participating anymore in the generation sector or the supply sector. The remaining sectors that are government controlled through regulation, highly regulated, are the transmission sectors and the distribution sectors. We have one transmission infrastructure backbone in the country. After 125 years of existence, the Philippines finally have an interconnection between the 3 main islands just earlier this year. Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, the 3 islands, are finally connected physically via this high voltage transmission system. For many, many years, for more than 100 years before that, there is no physical connection among the 3 islands. So finally, we are connected, but we still have a lot of other islands that are not connected to the main system. That's another difference, I guess, from our neighbors that we have. Geographically, we are an archipelago with a lot of small islands. So when we talk about off-grid earlier, a lot of discussions, we have several off-grid areas, some with demand or load as small as 500 kilowatt to as large as maybe 10, 20 megawatts. So that's the range of challenge that we face. The Energy Regulatory Commission, my office, oversees the entire country, both the grid and the off-grid areas. In this age, this is one challenge that I don't know if the other regulators also share, but one thing that's really real to us in the Energy Regulatory Commission in the Philippines is that we are regulating a sector that is constantly in flux. And in this age, the changes, the progress in technology is no longer incremental. They are really what we call disruptive technologies, disruptive changes. So how do we navigate in this era of disruption? This is a snapshot of the Philippine energy sector today. We have heard earlier electrification levels in other countries, in our neighbors. We have a very high electrification level in the Philippines, but still not high enough. As long as there's still a household that's not electrified in any of those islands, we still say we are not yet done. But we have a high electrification level. Because of the privatization and deregulation that was passed in 2001, we currently have not just one generation company. Previously, we had the state-owned National Power Corporation supplying the entire country. Now we have 226 generation companies in the Philippines after 20 years of that law being in place. We have around, this should be updated, this is already around 600 power plants all over the country, including those in the islands. We still have one transmission concessionaire, so the operation of our grid is actually privatized via a concession agreement. We have a spot market similar to Singapore, and that's why we look to Singapore as well in terms of changes, responses to disruption in the industry. Whenever we also look at regulating or at least revisiting the rules that govern our wholesale spot market. We currently have 468 participants in the spot market. We have a retail sector, very active, suppliers selling directly to large consumers. And this is perhaps one of the more unique features of the Philippine power market. We have 141 distribution utilities in the country. That's a lot. That's simply a lot, especially for a regulator with only 300 personnel in our plantilla. But the Philippines is also looking at, we've been talking about the transition, the Philippines is also looking at transition. And if the plans of our Department of Energy will all be realized, from currently a 630 billion peso industry, by 2040, we are looking to grow to a 7.6 trillion peso industry. That's in large numbers. But this is where we are today. Currently, coal dominates our power mix. In terms of generation, it's around 60% on a daily basis that is fueled by coal, with RE at 22%, natural gas at around 16%. That used to be a higher number supplied by natural gas. That was around 30 to 35% until about three years ago. We have our own natural gas reserve in the Philippines. That's why we were proud that we were not importing natural gas. But until 2-3 years ago, the reserves have been depleting quite aggressively, such that starting this year, we've started importing LNG as well. So our coal is also more than 90% imported from Indonesia. So if you put together our coal exposure and our nat gas exposure, that's a huge exposure to importation and all the complexities being exposed to the global market on coal and natural gas. And that's why we have been measuring also our level of self-sufficiency. This is just, I think, another presentation of what has been discussed earlier by some of our neighbors, where if you are exposed to, if you are like India and I think even Thailand to a certain extent, it also imports natural gas. The level of self-sufficiency is something that drives policymakers, regulators, I think also down to our consumers, because it gets into the issue of energy security. So it's no longer just a compulsion of being more environmentally sustainable, but also a compulsion of how are we making ourselves more energy secure. If you look at the graph, we have been our level of self-sufficiency has really been declining over the years. But there is some good news in the horizon. We have been consistently tagged, the country has been consistently tagged as one of the top investment markets for renewable energy among developing countries. Also, we are not new to the transition. And this is one point that I also wanted to share with everyone. The Philippines has been going through several transitions over the years, since the 1930s, when our National Power Corporation was formed. Our National Power Corporation was established in the 1930s to power the entire country using hydropower resources, which absolutely makes sense because we are a group of islands. So the water is just around us. So we were powered for several decades, actually for 4 decades, purely by renewable, purely by hydro. In the 1970s, this mandate was expanded to cover geothermal because we are also in the Pacific Ring of Fire and we have a lot of geothermal resources in the country. For several years, the Philippines ranked only to the US in geothermal production. That's no longer true, sadly, until about 3 years, just 3 years ago, when Indonesia already ranked second and we are now third in geothermal production. But still, for several decades, 1930s all the way to the 1980s, we were predominantly RE, with hydro and geothermal comprising the mix. But in the late 1980s to the early 2000s, we underwent the second transition. We shifted from a state-owned industry, a state-owned sector, to a private sector-driven industry. This is when privatization happened. I won't have the time to go through all the details, but I have agreed with the organizers to share with you the slides so you can go through them with detail. So this is the second transition. The third transition, because we have seen that from a purely RE-driven sector, we have actually grown into what I showed you earlier, predominantly coal and natural gas driven. Now we are trying to shift, going back to green. It started in 2008 when our Congress passed the Renewable Energy Act of the Philippines. And our Department of Energy also just 2 years ago adopted the targets of going back to our roots of renewable energy, increasing the RE share by 2030 to 35%, and by 2050 to at least 50%. But this is just a cheat sheet of what has happened in the Philippine energy industry over the maybe just the 2 decades. And I wanted to share this because I was listening earlier to some of our neighbors who are already predominantly RE. Actually, the question in my mind was, what will the transition look like for a country that's already predominantly RE? But this is I think maybe worth looking at the Philippine experience, because we were predominantly RE. We privatized, we deregulated, and that's when actually more fossil fuel plants came in. Did it make our rates more affordable? That's debatable, because even to this day, we are tagged as having the second highest electricity tariffs in the region, second only to Japan or maybe second to Singapore. But that's because we no longer subsidize our power rates. There is no government subsidy at all in our power rates when privatization happened. And this is the state of renewable energy in the country. And just to show you again a look at our geographical makeup, and that we are a group of islands. So there are several programs that we at the Energy Regulatory Commission have to support this going back to green shift, the third transition. Most of them are familiar to you. We have similar programs that are also adopted by our neighbors. The net metering program, the feed-in tariff program, the Green Energy Auction Program, which is the current program of the country. But there is a fourth shift, And this is, I think, where most of us are perhaps not being not articulated in this manner, that there are all these shifts, all these transitions are happening all at the same time. There is not a singular dimensional shift. It is a multi-dimensional shift that is happening, brought about by technology as well, where we see increasing decentralization while energy transition is also happening. And we see this globally. This is not unique to our region. This is not unique to us. The shift from just a unidirectional flow of energy to a multi-directional flow of energy. We have several programs in the Energy Regulatory Commission that support also decentralized systems. Aside from the net metering program, we have a program on distributed energy resources and microgrids and energy storage systems. The Department of Energy in the Philippines is the lead agency promoting our energy efficiency and conservation programs. And at the Energy Regulatory Commission, we support it with rate-related programs like time of use pricing and the pricing that affects our transmission charges. We have other programs in the pipeline, also similar to what you have heard earlier on EV, smart grid, peer-to-peer trading, offshore wind, and advanced metering infrastructure. But all these things, I guess the message is that they're all happening at the same time. It is quite challenging for a regulator to confront and address all these things. But I'm learning a lot, and there are a lot of solutions being offered in this discussion. So thank you very much.
So thank you, Ms. Dimalanta, and congratulations that you linked three main islands after 125 years. It's very good news. And now we are going to move to the next country, Singapore. Singapore is a small country, but the country decided to set up electricity market. Even the size is not that big, and the power generation rely 95% on gas, but the country decided to set up electricity market. And now we will hear from Eugene.
Thank you, Chair. As the second last speaker, I thought rather than go through the slides in detail, I will give a summary in a story form. It was a story that one of my colleagues in the Land Transport Authority in Singapore told me. So the Land Transport Authority in Singapore oversees the train systems. And there was a time when they wanted to make Wi-Fi available in the trains, right? So in the train stations, while waiting for the MRTs to come, they wanted the commuters to be able to access Wi-Fi, right? So what is the most straightforward way to make sure that your routers are placed properly? So if you're an engineer, you'll say you put it kind of regularly, right? So that every part of the platform will be able to receive your Wi-Fi signals almost uniformly, right? But they also wanted to do another objective, which was to make sure that the commuters do not crowd around the platforms in the middle, because people like to crowd around the middle, right? And we wanted to make them shift towards the end. It's always very difficult. So what they did was to then put all the routers nearer to the ends, right? So that when people start turning on their handphones and they say that the Wi-Fi signals got stronger as they walk towards the ends, they really accomplished their aim, right? And with no additional cost, so to speak. Now, I use this story to illustrate the point I'm going to make in my presentation, which is that as a regulator, we have many tools to use, right? It's like a toolbox. We have many tools to use for different circumstances, for different situations. On one hand, we can mandate many things, right? As a regulator, I can change the laws, I can make regulations, and I can ask the companies to be able to comply. There are times where I want to set the signal through pricing, right? So the carbon tax will be an example, where the government sends a price signal to the companies, and the price signals will then change the way decisions are made by the licensees and the companies in the economy. But on the other hand, there are times where you want some markets, right, to be able to get your allocation of resources effectively, right? And you do want that suite of tools to be able to do the right things at the right time. So today I want to talk about what has been going on in the Singapore energy transition, especially in the last 2 years. Driven by, I think, two important developments. One is the disruptions that my colleague, Chairperson Mona, talked about. In the last 2 years, most countries have gone through these energy disruptions where prices are very volatile and even the supply sometimes can be disrupted. The other major development is the push for more renewable energy. Singapore has committed to be a net zero economy by 2050, right? And how do we accomplish that given that we are naturally renewable energy disadvantaged, right? Given that we are no major sources. So if you look at the slide, 4 major pieces of our electricity sector. One, we call it the generation capacity. We have a free market where generation players can choose to invest or exit the market whenever they want. So it's really how the wholesale electricity market and the retail electricity market gives the price signals for some of these investment decisions. And then we also have the gas market where the generation companies will procure natural gas to be able to produce electricity. So for information, Singapore's fuel mix is primarily driven by natural gas. We are 95% natural gas fired, primarily driven by our combined cycle gas turbines. Then the energy crisis hit us, right, in 2021, 2022. And we had to implement a few decisions that could be seen as quite contradictory to what we have done in the past, right? But I'll explain later, this is what is necessary. So we had a standby LNG facility that was operated by the EMA to make sure that the power generation companies could draw gas, especially when supplies were depleted. And then we started introducing more enhanced regime for our electricity retailers to make sure that they have enough capital to be able to withstand the shocks in the system, as well as what we call a temporary price cap mechanism. It's like a circuit breaker that you see in the stock market to make sure that the electricity market is not driven by volatile prices all the time. And in this transition, we start to see a few things going on. On the policy imperative, apart from energy security, reliability, and cost competitiveness, we also wanted to see more decarbonizations. The other major change is that we are going from a fairly homogeneous combined cycle gas turbine dominated fuel mix to potentially a fuel mix that has renewable sources with some imports potentially from our neighboring countries, as well as new sources like geothermal. We just found a source in one of the areas in Singapore which has geothermal. We realized that if you dig deep enough, there will be enough power. The supply also will start changing from a very dispatchable, stable system to now that is pretty driven or disrupted by intermittent sources that needs to be coupled with more traditional sources to give you that stable outlook. Right? And finally, electricity used to be a pretty homogeneous product. You just need power to supply your appliances or your factories. But now there's a greater demand in Singapore, especially among the consumers, to say, I want green tariffs, I want different type of PPAs, power purchase agreements that feed my needs, right? And we're going to see that happening. So how is Singapore responding? A few ways. Generation capacity, we are introducing a centralized process, both for the generation capacity and gas procurement. It's quite a big shift from our previous market-driven policy, where we have allowed the generation companies and gas companies to be able to bring in both electricity and power on their own, based on their investment decisions. We have decided to move away from that. There will be a centralized process where the regulator will decide when the power will come in, and then we'll do an auction to see who has the best price and the best proposal to be able to come in. This will give some stability in the market compared to the uncertainty that sometimes markets face. We expect new technologies to come in, potentially to be ready for hydrogen, right? So we introduced a new regulations last year where all new power plants or combined cycle power plants need to be at least 30% hydrogen ready in the event that hydrogen becomes available. And finally, we are reviewing some of our market mechanisms to provide the right incentives for participation, both for new generation technologies as well as for the retail market. Finally, my last slide, to give you an overview, we have our net zero goals, and we call it the 4 switches strategy, right? So natural gas, we think, will continue to play a part, not just as a transition fuel, but as a source that would balance the issues that renewable energies bring about. We want to maximize our solar potential in Singapore. We crossed the 1 gigawatt peak last year for solar installation, and we are looking to a 1.5 gigawatt peak target by 2030. We also want to be connected to other power grids, like my colleague, chairman from the EC in Malaysia talked about. We want to be connected so that we can leverage the resources that the region brings about on a win-win basis. And finally, we want to prepare for new technologies, including low carbon alternatives, as well as hydrogen. And underpin, we need a power system that is both flexible but robust to be able to meet the needs of our country. And so today's presentation is really an example of what Singapore is doing, including using different tools in our toolkits, right, so that we can solve the problems for tomorrow using tomorrow's solutions rather than using yesterday's solutions. With that, thank you very much.
So thank you, Eugene, for interesting presentation. As you've seen that even Singapore has an electricity market for a long time, but when there comes the crisis or the problem, the country has to adapt. Now we will come to the last country, Sri Lanka. Will be presented by Professor Fernando. Professor Fernando, are you with us? Okay. We will wait a bit. Okay, before Professor Fernando ready to present, I could wrap up again. I think in Thailand we were often asked about the tariff of electricity, that why the tariff of Thailand is not so low, because among the 10 ASEAN countries, we are in the middle. And today you already listened from our colleagues that, for example, Malaysia has share of coal. That's why the price of tariff is pretty low. So now we get back to Professor Fernando. Professor Fernando, are you ready to present?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'll start. What about the screen? Is it clear?
Yes, we can see you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you all for inviting me for the conference in Thailand. Actually, I am unable to participate physically in this conference, but however, I will try to give some of the information which are related to Sri Lankan contest policy and regulation to mobilize energy transition in Sri Lanka. And basically, so our country is a smaller country, isolated, and actually in the power demand and energy demand is also comparatively low compared with the other countries. So since we are isolated, and I will explain what sort of a thing, then some kind of possible investments for the renewable energy that will be useful to develop our energy sector based on the electricity. And there are some plans with connecting to the South Asia via India. So then it will be open for the whole world. Going back to the next slide. First of all, I'll tell about our transition roadmap. So by 2030, we have to achieve 70% electricity generation from the renewables. So that's some kind of a target given to us. Then, so right now, our power generation is mainly based on hydro, coal, thermal, and renewable. These are the four types of generation with some kind of equal proportions. So one target is not to build any new coal power plants in future. So basically, we have 900 megawatt from the coal by 3 units. So we are not planning to build up new one in future. Then the carbon neutrality, the target is 2050. So this is in line with most of the countries in the other world. Then new addition to energy capacity to be only from the clean energy. So that's the target towards the clean energy. And during the transition, so LNG is one of the options. Then apart from that, the energy storage, assuming that we are in an isolated country without connected to the other part of the world countries, so pump hydroelectricity energy and battery energy storage system are some of the targets. Right now, we don't have, I mean, the huge battery storage or pump storage, and to ensure the reliability and the quality of the electricity supply, and to transform countries' transmission distribution infrastructure into renewable ready smart network, to implement the carbon and so on with tree plantation, etc. So these are some kind of roadmap related to the energy transition in Sri Lanka. And first of all, I would like to pay your attention about the two things about our utility at the present context and the future. The first slide is for the present one. Right now, the utilities we call the Ceylon Electricity Board. It is basically the monopoly between the generation, transmission within the same industry, and we have four different distribution companies, and apart from some private company we call LECO. Then there are independent power producers which are directly connected to the transmission. So the transmission network is the backbone, and it is owned by Ceylon Electricity Board. So the government, the cabinet ministers, so under that, the Ceylon Electricity Board is under the Ministry of Power and Energy. So I am representing the Utility Commission. That means the Regulatory Commission for the Electricity, and it is under the Ministry of Finance and Planning. Then there is some proposal for the restructuring of the Ceylon Electricity Board in future. So it is in the progress, but just to brief on some of the targets, and it will be sometimes different, but just tell you. So basically then the distribution companies, transmission companies, generation companies, they are separate at the national level, some kind of body, and this is the Ministry of Power and Energy. Then our regulatory commission, that is also linked together. So it is still in the process. Still we are following the former case, actually the individual Ceylon Electricity Board, but in future we will expect the restructuring of the park. Now I will show about because I have mentioned about the our target till 2040, then some kind of electricity demand estimation. So right now, if you see that our energy demand is something around 16,000 gigawatt hours. So that is comparatively low with respect to the other countries. And we have approximately about the demand increment about 6.3%, approximately for 2042. So that is the energy demand. Then we will see that what are our generation forecast related to that. You will see that at present it is mainly covered by hydro, all then oil-based naphtha, diesel, etc. Then the renewable. So at this point, the renewable integration to the system is comparatively low. So with respect to the future years, then hydro is we expect it is more or less same, because Sri Lanka is actually the hilly part is in the middle part of the country. Then all the reservoirs around that and all the possible hydro generation is taken right now. Then the coal one, so we have, as I mentioned you, it is about 900 megawatt. And by 2040, it will go towards its end of life of the generation plant. So no new plants are added to the system. As a result of that, so it will reduce. Then the green color, the renewable should be added to cover up the gap for the demand. Then at the same time, gas, natural gas is some of the option. Then we will see that about the present prices. Actually, this is in US dollars, and you can sense about its values. As you know that at present, the electricity cost is relatively high compared with other countries. So if you take hydro, it is the lowest, like 1.2 US cents, with a plant factor like 14%. And coal is like a critical one, 9.5, and it depends on the world market values and because we don't have any coal right now in the country. And oil is also we import, so it is very huge. That is why we want to cut down, remove most of it. Natural gas can be another possibility compared with the coal. So we don't have right now, and in some of the power plants they have the capability. Renewable energy, it's about plant factor about 20%, and it's roughly around 7.1 because the renewable energy that is provided by as a uh, bulk generation by some of the companies, then also the domestic people with their rooftop solar panel. Then so we will see that how the renewable integration within the rest of the countries, how it is contributed. And you can see that mini hydro, it's more or less stable. Then wind, we can have some possibility, especially in the northern and eastern part. Then biomass is also more or less. And we have the main contribution coming from solar. And majority can be like rooftop solar from the domestic, then ground mounted. Then also we are targeting, we have large reservoirs, then the floating solar, etc. Then some of the possible options during the energy transition, diversification of energy resources in future is to be met by introducing natural gas to the existing mix, coal, hydro, fuel and other renewable sources. The long-term generation plan propose natural gas-fired power plants throughout the planning window, because some of the power plants we have that opportunity to connect natural gas. Natural gas internal combustion engines and gas turbines provide operational flexibility required to integrate higher proportion. With a heavy dependency on natural gas in future, strategic diversity in fuel supply needs to be ensured, internal and external vulnerabilities of LNG. Because in all cases, LNG, coal, both we have to import. All natural gas based on power plants are also have a dual fuel capability, as I mentioned you. So this is actually, if you consider about Sri Lanka as island, it is isolated within the Indian Ocean. Now, there is some plan towards, after 2030, that connecting to the regional network, that means India, within the South Asian network. Then afterwards, it is connected to the whole Asia, Africa, and rest of the world. So the government of India and Sri Lanka, they have signed MOU in 2010, some years back, to conduct a feasibility study for interconnection of the electricity grid between the two countries. Right. So now still it is under discussion, and it will be coming to the picture hopefully towards the end of 2030. And feasibility of study was carried out jointly CB, that is the local power utility, power grid corporation in India, and the plan is to provide 1,000 megawatt HVDC interconnection project. So it is by two numbers of 500 megawatt HVDC. Then how it connects is from the northern part of Sri Lanka with the southern part of India. So basically 130 kilometers, 400 kV HVDC overhead line segment in Indian coast from Madurai. In between India and Sri Lankan sea, so it's 120 kilometer under sea cable. Then within Sri Lanka, so the central part of the country, what you call Anuradhapura, and the parties we call Manna, it is a 110 kilometer overhead line. Now we have 220 kV network as the transmission in some of the places, and majority are 132 kV. Then towards the end of my slide, so I will focus on the opportunities and challenges by achieving these things. So the challenges are in a small isolated power system. It's about 200 watt bus bars. Ability to integrate more variable renewable energy significantly depends on the stability and operational flexibility of the system. So you know that renewable, even solar, other things, it's not a stable one. It's a fluctuating part. Then technical constraint of the dispatching part, flexible level govern ability to system to operate reliable under the variable renewable energy penetration levels. Operation constraints during the low load period, such as weekends and especially the night time. Basically, in our daily load pattern, we have the night peak something like 70% above the daytime one, because we don't have much industries which consume electricity. So the night peak, which is contributed by the domestic, and it has a higher value. So nighttime it reduced, to a lower value, and with a large amount of wind, mini hydro, and solar. Solar PV generation. So in future, the country is also looking for the connection of electric vehicles. So then by adjusting whatever the time, they can charge their electric vehicles. So this can be match also depending on that. Then high instantaneous penetration level to the inverter-based generation towers, the system ability to withstand sudden imbalances, etc. Then opportunities. So we know that countries closer to the equator, then high solar and wind potential, especially in the northern part and southern part. So I will show that in a map, then it will be clear to you. Then ability to transfer power with the Indian grid. If it is connected to the Indian grid, so then always the energy trading is possible. Then just coming back to the my last slide, show you about the renewable resource map related to the first one is the PV. You can see that this is our country, the hill area. Northern part, it is actually promising area for the renewable, and southern part is also there. Other part is the sun irradiation is somewhat less. Then wind based on the onshore within the country. The blue color is the largest one. So it is actually middle part here. The reason is now here the Sri Lanka is surrounded by Indian Ocean, and there are two types of monsoon. I mean winds coming from southeast and northeast and southwest, right? So accordingly, the wind is in this direction. For the wind part from the rest of the places like the northern part and the southern part are limited. Also, we have a lot of rain in this area, so therefore the PV generation is very much less. Then here it is the offshore wind map. It is more towards the uh, northern part and the southern part. So India is somewhere there. So it's like a corridor, and the wind part between the India and Sri Lanka, it is basically rich. Especially if you take Talemanna area, it is a small island, and we are planning to have the India Sri Lanka interconnection from Manna to here. So it is exposed to the wind area, and southern part is also there. And the rest of the places, the other areas, it is not very much promising. With that note, I have already provided some of the basic information related to the energy and how it happen in the energy trading, and what are our energy demand and what are our possible generation mix, etc. So as a country, so you know that our country has faced a severe economic crisis uh, some years back, and now it is in the recovery process. So the new power generation should be added to the system, and it is basically based on some investments. So it is open for investment for some of the countries, so they can invest and get, a good energy trade. So with that note, I would like to thank you all for inviting me for this session, and thank you very much.
So thank you, Professor Fernando. We're running late, a bit behind the schedule, so I would like to give, short conclusion to each panelist about how to reach the energy transition, the collaboration among ASEAN countries. We start from the Mr. Yusuf.
Sure. Thank you, moderator. I think we need, apart from those interconnections, which is obviously a physical form of connection across all of our countries, I think we need a common platform, and that common platform of energy trade. The reason being is each of our countries have different systems. Philippines and Singapore have really charged ahead and gone on market systems, which is obviously very, very good. But other countries like Thailand included, Malaysia, Indonesia, and other countries, Myanmar and so on, are not. So if we are to really be then fully connected and then expect the electrons to flow freely, um, there should be commercial and market systems that we both respect. Now, in that sense, Malaysia have started it by putting up a market mechanism for renewable energy. And that is with our neighbors. So hopefully that could grow, and that would encompass not just renewable energy but all energy as well. Because I think there was a speaker in your panel prior who mentioned, I think he was from Cambodia, that's right, who mentioned that if we are all interconnected, then our load curves are all different, our circumstances are different. We can have power reserves from Myanmar to help Cambodia or Malaysia and so on and so forth, and maybe as far as Philippines as well. Why not? Then all of us would be extremely more efficient, and all of us would economically would be much stronger as well. Not unlike the European Union and its power system and its economics. So I think that hopefully is both the challenge and the opportunity. And there are forums within ASEAN where all of us can converge and agree on such common platforms.
So thank you very much. So next, Mr. Wu.
Okay, thank you. In our power transmission collaboration with the neighbor country, it is the major barrier is the power system synchronization. And also when we are the negotiate and the collaborate with the neighbor country, in our country is the weak in the power system, and also it is a little bit difficult to collaboration and negotiation for the connection with our power system and the neighbor country. So we need to say every time we need to be concerned with the bed-to-bed power system to connection with our power system. So it is very costly and it is very difficult to invest for our country. It is the major barrier, and also in collaboration with the power grid code is, and also at this situation it's a little bit difficult to synchronize for the grid code in the regional country. It may be the major barrier for our collaboration for the power transmission system. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Miss Dimalanta.
Yes. Thank you. Maybe we can. I just have 2 points, I guess. Interconnection in terms of learning, because definitely from what we have heard this afternoon, the different countries are in a long spectrum of stages of development in the or stages of evolution. I wouldn't even say development, but stages of evolution of the power sector. From, as I mentioned earlier, the Philippines, we have undergone several transitions as well. I'm sure our neighboring countries are also undergoing different transitions, and they are at different stages. And we can learn from each other in terms of what has worked and what has not worked, what it cost us to get to a certain point, and what it will cost us to get to the next stage. So I think interconnection in terms of learning will be very important. The second is, I guess, interconnection in terms of funding. And I really would like to build on the example of Malaysia, where if we cannot physically interconnect, then there are other forms of interconnection that we can explore that will probably allow us to generate more funds for each other. So in a way, you turn into financial instruments what physical limitations have been, what there are in terms of physical limitation is, and that way we grow the pie, right? Instead of competing for resources, competing for funding, we grow the pie, and we have more to address each other's special or particular circumstances.
So thank you very much. Now come to Eugene.
Yeah. Building on what my fellow panelists said, I think my dream list is to be able to come up together as a framework for interconnection where we can deal with issues like governance, your technical standards, as well as your commercial terms. Today, it's done bilaterally, which takes a lot of time, and that's a lot of barriers, right? But if all the countries can come together on a win-win basis to find that framework, I think that would be very interesting, right? And my final call to action, 3 C's. One is to continue to commit to that goal that we want to pursue, especially on the net zero. 2, to co-opt and coalesce the right parties, especially the younger generation. I sense that it's a lot of excitement, especially among this new generation, around the themes of sustainability that we have not seen before. And I think we need to harness that. And then finally, to consistently and continually implement those initiatives, regardless of what is the external or internal developments.
So thank you very much. Professor Fernando already left us. So I would end this panel with a big applause from the audience. Thank you very much.